morning. Today's subject is, where is God? When I was a young boy, I'd say maybe 8 or 10 years old, I went to my father's office with him on a Saturday. And he was in the real estate business. And his office was mainly a bunch of desks and telephones. And, well, there wasn't really very much to do for a little kid in the office. But as it happened, right across the street, and just down just a little ways, was a miniature golf course. And I don't think I've ever seen one in India. It's a place where you just putt, you know, and it's designed with many, you know, bumps and curves and little buildings that you go through, and it's entertaining. And the object is to hit the ball the least number of times as possible. So the perfect hit is a hole-in-one, where you start and you just hit it once and it goes right in the hole. Usually it takes 2 or 3 or more hittings in order to get it in the hole. And so normally there's 18 holes in a golf course. And so the first time you go, you know, you hit it all over the place and you don't know what to do with it, but eventually you get better at it. But at most of these courses, the very last hole is a special one. If you get a hole-in-one, then you get a pass for a free play. You can play again. And that was the way it was at this place. So I had been there a few times, and I gradually realized that it didn't really matter what my score was during the 17 holes. It was that 18th one that mattered. And so one day I was playing, and I had been there a number of times. I was getting better as I went, and I was playing along, and I was thinking, what can I do to raise the chances of me getting a hole-in-one at the end? And as I went through the course, really the only thing I could come up with was that I had to ask God to help me. And of course, growing up in a society of where consumerism is strong, it was pretty much, and I think it's fairly common. I was thinking, well, if I wanted God to do this for me, then I was going to need to offer something in return. And so I began to think, as I'm putting along, thinking, now what can I give God? I mean, God knows everything, right? So what could I give God? I mean, that's kind of silly. And I was really stumped with that. You know, I didn't know what to do. And that final hole was getting closer and closer. And I was really caught up in the moment. And I was thinking, what can I give God? What can I give God? And I was thinking, well, it must be something challenging for me. You know, in other words, it can't be something easy. It's got to be something challenging if I want God to do this. So I said, what would be challenging? What would be challenging? I'm getting closer. I've got to figure out what to do. And I said, oh, okay, I've got something. I will be good. I'll be a good boy. That was challenging for me. So now I'm thinking, okay, if I offer to be a good boy, then God will give me a hole-in-one. And then I start thinking about, well, what exactly does that mean? What does being a good boy, I mean, does that mean eating your vegetables? And, you know, I was weighing it, is this really worth it? How bad do I want this hole-in-one? And apparently I wanted it pretty bad, because I thought, oh, you know, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? And finally I got up to that last hole, and I'm standing there, and I'm ready to putt, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, and inside my heart, this is a true story, inside my heart I said, okay, I'll do it. And I hit the ball, and of course it went right in. I got a hole in one, and the bell started to ring, and I started dancing my way over to the cage, and I got my free pass for another play. But from that moment, I began to recognize that I really, didn't know if it was coincidence, or, because I mean, there's always a chance that I might have gotten a hole in one, and did God really care whether I got a hole in one or not? It didn't seem very likely. But I recognized that I had, regardless of how I viewed God, I made a commitment inside myself. So I had to do what I could, and I suppose in my own small way, I didn't try to improve for a few days or a week, who knows. But it did really awaken in me an interest in God and what that might be. And, later when I read the autobiography of a yogi and began to read about the spiritual traditions around the world, there's certain common things when you start talking about, where are you going to find God? And, well, think about autobiography of a yogi, and when Master was only 6 years old, he was meditating, and he had a vision of the Himalayan yogis, and then he had a vision of God as light. And he then had a lifelong feeling that he needed to go to the Himalayas in order to find God. And this is very common. You see in all of the traditions of the world, people who want to find God generally don't stay at home. They go out to find God, and most commonly they go out to mountains or the forests, which are usually out near mountains. They go to some place up there. And if you think about the world traditions, the mythologies of the various religions of the world, where do the gods live? The gods live up somewhere. They live up, in the higher spheres. The Greeks, the gods lived in Mount Olympus. They were just up on the mountain. Occasionally people go to the desert to find God, but by and large, they go up to the mountains. And Master was really stuck on this. Master had this urge to go to the Himalayas, and he ran away from home, and he had other attempts that he didn't get as far. But he got on the train, and he's basically leaving. But he didn't make it. But he had that urge, and then even after he found his guru Sri Teshwar, he again left the ashram and went up to the mountains for quite a while. But eventually he came back, and he recognized that his guru was his Himalayas, and his meditation room was his cave. And if you think about what it is that the saints do in order to connect to God, because isn't connecting to God finding God? And where is God? Has anybody who's ever climbed to Mount Everest found God up there? I've never heard of them saying, oh, there was this, what? I mean, Moses climbed a mountain and he found a burning bush. God must be bigger than a burning bush. The Jews say that God is unknown, that you can't relate to God directly. But there's a fabulous tradition in India of saints experiencing God's presence. But inevitably, we understand that even though we have this urge to get away from it all, and to seek God in the mountains. Where did Yogananda say that he found God? In his little attic meditation room. That is where he found God. What that means is that, we all know by definition that God is everywhere. So why do we have to go anywhere? Well, because the here that we experience right now, we're not getting it. We can't feel God where we are right here, right now. We think, well, if I just move the body, something different will happen. And this is part of the great illusion of Maya that makes us think that God is far away, or that God is even unknowable. In America, the states, each of the states have a little slogan. And Missouri is one of the Midwest states, and its slogan is, "Show me." They don't believe anything unless you show them. You have to show them. And Kriyananji used to tell a story, I think Master told this story as well, about this man that was so into, I don't believe it unless I see it. He was on a train one day with a colleague, and the colleague was looking out the window at the scenery, and they saw a field of sheep. And the colleague says, "Oh, look, the sheep are shorn. They're all shaved. Their fleece has been shaved off." And this guy, he says, he looks up from his window, "Well, on this side anyway." He was only willing to admit that they were shorn on the side that he could see. He wouldn't admit that he has to see it to believe it. Now, in religion, we're asked to believe it without seeing it. Most of the world religions require you to have what they describe as faith. You just have to have faith. So when I was a young boy and doing my little miniature golfing, I had that kind of faith that God was hearing my prayer, but I didn't really know. I didn't really perceive whether God was there or not. And in the end, I became like that man on the train. I became, "Show me." I came to a point where I didn't believe in God, because I had no reason to believe in God, because I had never seen God. Why should I believe in something that I can't see? And most people take the point of view that you just have to have faith. Well, when I read Autobiography of a Yogi, and I learned that you don't have to have faith until you have experience, that you can experience the presence of God. That not only can you experience it, but that you don't have to go up to the mountains. It might be nice to, but you don't have to. What you do have to do, if you want to find God, to be in God's presence, is have a place where you apply yourself to that task. If God is somewhere, if God is everywhere, then it's not an issue of where we go outwardly, it's where we go inwardly. This is the whole key. So, this is the whole secret to the path of yoga. The practices, in order to not just affirm that God exists, but to see God. How do we see God? We see in the beginning relatively well. It depends on each person's experience individually, but it is a universal experience. At some point, every devotee will experience seeing the spiritual eye. And you may have a vision like Yogananda did, of God as light. One of the 8 manifestations, the 8 qualities of divine, one of them is light. And gradually, as you deepen your interconnection to, you don't even have to say God, you can say life, God, nature, the universe. It isn't about the words that we use. It's about this idea that we're going into the center of whatever we want to call it, to experience a communication. It's called communion. Communion is when you experience an inner commingling, a oneness. We call the goal of yoga is samadhi, oneness. Oneness with whatever you want to call it. But this experience is in the end, it comes to us through our journey towards it. Our journey towards it is an opening up of our consciousness for that which is already present, because God is always present. So the key is to recognize that our journey to the mountain, our journey to the cave, whatever you want to describe it as, maybe you want your journey to be to an island in the South Pacific. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, that journey is within our own self. And when we practice the techniques that we've been given for this inner journey, we will turn from, I wonder if it's true, I really hope it's true, it might be true, to, I am experiencing it a little bit. This much is true. This much more is true. This much more is true. And the more you experience your interconnection to Spirit, you are experiencing where God is. And it expands and it continues to grow out. And as you go down the journey of your spiritual life, you begin to realize that in the beginning, it was hard to have faith because I had no experience. Once I began to have experience, for example, if you had wanting to go on a trek up in the mountains, and you were given a map, and the map, the first stage of the trek, you went to the first stage, and the map said what would be there, and when you got there, it was there. So then you went on the second stage, and when you got there, the map was correct. So now, as you go, you begin to have more and more faith in that map. And eventually, you're going to have faith in it. You're going to turn the corner and say, I have faith in this until somebody proves me wrong, rather than I'm going to have, hold up my opinion until somebody proves it right. You make that shift from either not knowing or not believing to not just believing, but believing based on actually experiencing some degree of true inner experience. And this is the key, because it's not enough to say that philosophically that God exists or where God is. We have to go to that stage where we experience God. And only if we've experienced God, we can say, well, at least I know where God is here. And gradually, as we expand our consciousness, we recognize further and further that God is infinite. And that our ultimate experience of where God is union with that infinite presence. So, sometimes in our everyday lives, we think that God is far away. That I'm so busy and so distracted by my daily life that it's really, as a practical matter, not possible for me to find God, to know for sure if God exists. This thinking is not correct. The path of yoga simply says, do an experiment. Don't take our word for it. Do these practices. And as you practice, as most of you do, don't let the challenge of the journey distract you from the purpose of the journey. Do you think that the ultimate experience should be easy? Do we really think that seeking God should be only 5 minutes work? No, because although in truth it could be 1 second's work, if we were to truly, in the fullest sense of the word, commit ourselves, open ourselves. Master said that one of the disciples said, well, if I said I knew God, I wouldn't really know God. And Master said, well, you answer your own question. Because if you think you wouldn't, you wouldn't. But if you could think 100% that you did, you would. God is so close. I mean, this microphone in front of me is right here, but if I go like this, I don't know where it is. I don't know. When we awaken, truly, fully awaken to God's presence, we're going to realize how close God was the whole time. St. Anthony, who was in the desert, and he was in this tomb, and he had been tempted by Satan to be distracted by this woman, and he refused to turn from Christ. And then the tomb began literally to crack, and he said, I will not give up Christ. And just when he thought death was coming, Christ appeared to him. And Anthony said, well, where were you? Where have you been? And Jesus said, oh, I've been with you the whole time. Remember when Sri Teshwar met Babaji under the banyan tree? And he got so excited, even Sri Teshwar got excited, And he went to get him something. When he came back, Babaji was gone. And then Sri Teshwar was upset with him for disappearing. And later, when he saw Babaji again, Babaji says, couldn't you see me in the sunlight? Couldn't you see me everywhere? And Sri Teshwar went, oh, okay. You recognize how easy it is to be distracted by perfectly good things. Oh, I mean, this is culture. I want to bring something. The guests come, you have to feed them. But no, you have to see God. You have to be calm. You have to be in the center. You have to recognize that God is present all the time. So when you're feeling frustrated at work, when you're feeling frustrated on the highway, when you feel frustrated when people won't queue up and you have to push in to get whatever is done, whatever you need, think that this is all God. God is right here, right now. And when you practice this, you will begin to recognize a joy inside of you. A joy that will just be there, bubbling underneath all of the ups and downs. This is something that we can practice. You don't have to wait for the ultimate experience of samadhi to experience this inner joy, this equanimity, this peacefulness, this sense of nothing can touch me if I cling to God right here, right now. So experiment with this. The next time you feel yourself starting to lean towards frustration, think, God is here. Oh, okay. And feel it in your heart and in your meditation practice. The deeper you go, the more joy you feel, the more peace you feel. Remember that experience Get it clear in your mind. This is more of what it feels like to be in God's presence. And then when you feel that point of frustration in your life, remember that. Remember that good meditation. And bring your mind back to that open, calm state. And you will find that the more you practice this, the more you'll be able to do it. And but two is that you won't need to do it. You won't, in other words, it will be more automatic. You won't have to work so hard to do it. It will become more automatic that you will just feel less affected by all of that tumult. So, the way to deepen our awareness of where God is to spend time in your meditation. Give it that attention. Master said he found God. That was where he found God, in this meditation room. And of course, we use the Sangha as our group meditation room. This is important too. But in the end, each of us must take this journey individually. And in order to do that, we have to commit ourselves to it. And just in the way that I said, well, Lord, I'm going to be a good boy. We have to determine, Lord, I'm going to live in harmony with your will for my life in the very best way that I can. And that will lead us in the very fastest route to experiencing where God is.